So Brexit continues its tumultuous journey along a train track that, well, never existed, and as a result the locomotion has never gone forward. It is just sat there at the station, and the Brexiteers are sat on the train wondering why the train isn't going forward, because there was never any track to go forward on to begin with. And this week has revealed yet more nonsense, because here we have Ian Dunt. Once again, I always say this every single time. If you want good news, go to Ian Dunt, go to politics.uk, subscribe to their newsletter and follow him on Twitter. You will get the best up-to-date analysis on Brexit from him. He is quite simply the best journalist covering Brexit. So, the headline: the idea of a Labour-Tory Brexit deal is functionally insane. The whispers came all week. While the headlines focused on the sacking of Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson, a weird rumour started floating around. Labour and the Tories were close to a Brexit deal. The spokesperson were sounding increasingly bullish. The landing zone between their two positions had been spotted. Once the local election results started dribbling in on Friday morning, the whispers turned into shouts. Labour had done terribly, as had the Conservatives. Both were being punished for failing to deliver Brexit. Something had to be done, and quickly. The time to sign off the deal. But of course, that analysis makes no sense if you look at who were the big winners. The two big winners were the parties that had basically said, we're not going to do Brexit. That's who the two winners are. That's not what, again, the voice and the will of the people sounds like from this recent election. This analysis, of course, makes no sense. The big winners of the night were the Greens and the Liberal Democrats, both parties with extremely clear pro-Remain policies. If this was a punishment for failing to deliver Brexit, it was a temptuously weird way of showing it. And yet, public support for Remain is treated by journalists as a ghostly phenomenon, something which we suspect might be in the air, but have been reliably assured does not exist. After all, Remain lost the referendum, so in the binary win-lose mind of many political commentators, it should have at that point simply vanished. The demonstrable instances of Remain support are all ignored. Remainers who worked to deny Theresa May her majority in 2017 general election were wallpapered over by the relentless nonsense about 80% of voters backing parties with pro-Brexit manifestos. The huge rallies in London became the subject of a whole subculture of crowd-coddling methodology. Experts: the 6 million strong revoke petition was dismissed as a leaky and unreliable Twitter exercise. Remain voters are treated like an old family scandal. The thing polite visitors won't mention when they come over for dinner. This led to extraordinary sights this morning of political commentators looking at the screen showing that the Tories down, Labour down, UKIP down, and the Greens and Dems up. But before promptly coming to the conclusion that voters were sending a message to get Brexit over with, the level of cognitive dissonance is quite remarkable. But regardless, this is where we are, and it was what so many Labour MPs heard loud and clear. Suddenly, there was an increased pressure to seal a deal with the Tories next week. It was worth remembering that doing so is simply insane. Put aside the rights and wrongs of it. On a basic strategic level, it is crazy for Labour to do. First, it will cut the party in half. In a flash, Jeremy Corbyn will lose all his Remain support from his MPs, and he will not lose them in a brief, humiliating vote, which will not soon be forgotten. He will lose them in an era-defining vote, which will be remembered forever. That scar will stay there, exasperated by every Brexit event which takes place afterwards. Look at it this way. Change UK's MP MPs will be really, really hoping it does. Labour won't just share the blame for what's about to happen. It'll be worse than that. Labour will own it. So many Tories will oppose a customs union that the majority of the governing party they are likely to vote against means that if it passes, it'll need more Labour votes than Tory votes. May won't just be binding Corbyn's hands to Brexit, she will be passing him the designated muck-encrusted chalice in its entirety. The deal is not going to be popular. May lies when she says that the withdrawal agreement will draw a line under Brexit. It barely even starts it. All it finalises is the divorce. Ahead of us, there are many countless years of talks, many of which will likely take place in the humiliating position of the backstop, during which the EU will continue to outmaneuver and to outnegotiate us, just as it has for the last 3 years. To call it humbling is to give into hope. It will have all the dignity of a middle-aged man caught trying to cheat on his wife in a London nightclub, and it will keep going day after day, relentlessly, a droning mixture of tedium and embarrassment, years after people lost any interest in the issue. Remainers will hate it because it's Brexit, and precisely as a self-harming measure and insane as they warned it would be. Brexiteers will hate it because it is awful, and they can tell themselves the fantasy that it would have all been fine if we just had a deal, just had no deal. In fact, they would make precisely no difference if it were to be a harsher shock of humiliation and chaos, followed by a return to talks on precisely the same terms as before. But they won't know that. The unicorns will live freely on in their Sky Island, unaffected by the grim, refuting reality which an ERG victory would entail. And the plan is for Labour to buy into all that. I can't see it happening. And Jeremy Corbyn would be an absolute idiot if he does go forward with this. So it would be absolutely crazy. It would destroy Corbyn and end the party for a generation. It would make the Lib Dems' decision to support tuition fees look like a masterstroke of electoral ingenuity. The honest truth is that there is no exit from this situation at a parliamentary level. It does not exist. The only way to break the deadlock is to go back to the public for another referendum. And this no longer is just some Remainer strategy. It's the only logical course of action where we are now. But of course, that cannot be it cannot be contemplated, because Remain, of course, ceased to exist. And we are forced to go through with this dreadful charade all over again, for no discernible purpose, and with no rhyme or reason. And once again, Ian Dunn hits it right squarely on the head. At the time of doing this video, there is no rumour that this deal is any closer to being done, unless it gets voted for. But then I'll have been in France when it goes off, which might be quite fun. Who knows? Maybe we'll do a live stream video if anything does happen significantly while we're there, but we'll see. So yeah. This is the potential Brexit deal. I very much doubt it will happen, but both parties getting the completely wrong message. Remember, if you look at the entirety of this, what it basically says is that the Remain parties in the local referendum, local elections, came out on top, while Labour and the Conservatives lost dramatically. Even UKIP got wiped out. So once again, here we are.